Hello everyone. It's Nelson Lee with an Agape Livecast weather update, and we're talking about Tropical Storm Debby. And you can see Debby there in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. We do have also another item of interest there east of the Caribbean Sea, the Lesser Antilles. You can see the formation of chance through the next 7 days is pretty low, 20%, and we have Carlotta and Daniel in the Eastern Pacific, and I'll actually show you that on a different type of satellite picture. But by all accounts and everything that we see, Debby is the hot ticket item. And if you look on the bottom right of your screen, I have the track there. And let me make sure that, let me make sure I've updated. There we go. I've updated the latest track from the Hurricane Center, and you can see also the Tampa weather radar streaming there in that box for you. So here, let's see here. Here we have the latest track from the Hurricane Center. Moving to the north at 12 miles an hour. The top sustained winds are 65 miles an hour, and they're still, of course, calling for it to become a hurricane. It's taking advantage of those very warm Gulf waters over the eastern Gulf of Mexico. There you can see the 5 o'clock position, 27.7 north, 84.4 west, about 120 miles west of Tampa. Sustained winds again are 65 miles an hour. And we see we have some storm surge warnings from the mouth of St. Mary's River up to the South Santee River, South Carolina. Has been changed to a storm surge warning. We'll talk a little bit more about what's going on there. We have a storm surge watch along Florida's coast from Bonita Beach northward along the middle Long Beach, Longboat Cay, including Charlotte Harbor. And we have a hurricane warning in effect from Florida's coast from the Suwannee River to Indian Pass. So let's take a look at the hurricane discussion. You can see it says Debby's cloud pattern continues to show increasing organization, and we have definitely seen that over the last 24 hours. If you can remember yesterday around a little later than this time, it was a discombobulated mess. The pressure was upwards of around 1,005 millibars, and now we're down to 992 millibars. It was moving west-northwest. Now it has taken that turn to the north, and it will continue to move over the waters of high heat content and remain in an area of low vertical shear into Monday morning when it moves inland. And the key messages and the key takeaways are potentially historic heavy rainfall. Historic heavy rainfall across southeastern Georgia and South Carolina through Friday morning, likely resulting in areas of catastrophic flooding. So as we look at what they're forecasting from the Hurricane Center, they're bringing Debby inland as a hurricane of around 85 miles an hour. That seems reasonable given how much time is left for Debby and the atmospheric conditions. So as we look at the rainfall forecast from the Weather Prediction Center, they were going for areas of about 20 inches over Savannah and Charleston earlier. Now they've dropped that back down to about 16 to 20 inches. I wouldn't be surprised to see pockets higher than 20 inches as we move into the next 5 days, but we'll talk about that here in a second. And it's looking to peak storm surge forecast from 6 to 10 inches again across Appalachia Bay from the Suwannee River up points northward. Again, the big ticket item here for Debby is going to be historic flash flood risk and flooding, at least as you can see this graphic over a wide swath of North Florida, southeastern Georgia, southeastern South Carolina, at least a 70% probability, and that's major for such a large area of flash flood risk. So here are your storm force wind probability chart and when we expect to see those tropical storm force winds make impact to land as Debby moves inland. We can start to see those tropical storm force winds make inland, get inland probably later on tonight, and definitely by early tomorrow morning in the early morning hours, and make their way in around daybreak. So I'm going to show you This is a very interesting map. It's called the Mimic. It is a total precipitable water chart, and it just shows you how much juice is in the atmosphere, so to speak, how much water vapor is in the atmosphere, total precipitable water. If you were to take a column of air and take all the water out of that instance, it just shows you how much water is in there. And I wanted to show you this because you can really see Debby over the last 2 days get her act together, as she was over Cuba as a tropical wave and then as a tropical depression. And then once she got in the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, you can still really see her wrap up. And then over here in the eastern Pacific, you can see Carlotta and Daniel, and then finally Tropical Depression 5E. So taking a look at Debby, you can see these thunderstorms really starting to get wrapped around the center, right at the center, and you can see the upper level clouds being thrown out in what we call outflow, but you can see the central dense overcast right around the center. And if we look at the infrared, where we see the coldest cloud tops, we're really starting to get some really cold cloud tops around minus 80 degrees Celsius, and that's kind of what we're looking for in tropical activity. We want to see those dense cold cloud tops right at the center, and we're really starting to see that. And now that Debby's slowed down and that she's going to move inland towards Appalachia Bay, she's going to buy herself a little bit more time to perhaps strengthen a little bit more. So here's the regional radar, and you can see where Debby is kind of meandering around, maybe moving a little bit east of due north, maybe about a 010 or so, but the overall movement has been to the north. Classic presentation of a tropical cyclone. We have banding right around the center. And if we zoom in again to Tampa's radar, we can see the center is very well defined and moving off towards the north. So what do we get when we look at the computer models? Well, the computer models here, let me zoom in for you a little bit here so you can get a good close look. We have a lot of agreement bringing Debby into Appalachia Bay. But then as it drifts and the steering currents dry up, it takes Debby slowly over to the east. You can see we have Debby moving at a good clip for the first 24 hours. Then it starts to slow down at 48 hours, and then you can see a bunch of 96s here. Look what happens over the next 3 days. Not a lot of movement at all, ladies and gentlemen. Just really slows down, and this is not good news because it's going to slow down and stall right near the coast, which means it's not going to be inland where it's not going to be able to tap the moisture. It's going to be right along the coast. It's going to be able to tap into that moisture, and that also brings some other bad news that I'll talk about here in a second. So here are the super ensembles, the track density for Debby. You can see we have really good agreement, and then what happens in 60 hours, 72 hours, we have a lot of disagreement, so much so that in 5 days, the models really have no idea where to take Debby. Some of them in 6 days have it all the way up near Nova Scotia, and some of them have it in Alabama. That's a lot of disagreement. So I always like to liken the ensembles as a choir. And when your choir is all singing in tune, then you know you've got a good tune. But when they all start to sing out of tune, it sounds horrible. So that's what's happening here. And you can kind of look at the ensemble means here. So what we have here is 4 or 5 different choirs singing. And right now they're all singing the same tune and they're all singing the same notes, and it sounds beautiful. But in about 4 or 5 days, everybody decides they want to sing a different note and a different tune. And we have some singing all the way up here, and we have some singing all the way down in Alabama. We have some singing Take Me Home to Maine and some singing Sweet Home Alabama. And it's crazy. So time will tell what's going to happen. And let me show you what's happening here. We have 2 models that we normally look at as tropical meteorologists. We have the European and the GFS. The European, for the first 30, 48 hours, this trough, to the north, we can see it here right now. It's over Virginia, North Carolina. It's pulling Debby up. And that's the reason why she's moving to the north, and then it bypasses and leaves her. And she gets a little bit stronger. And matter of fact, if I were to go to the, let's see, the surface wind chart here, let's see, there we go. We can see. And it just sits and spins and finally moves back inland over South Carolina. Everybody see that? Sits and spins and moves inland over South Carolina, and then finally moves slowly over North Carolina. However, if we look at what the GFS does, it's singing the same tune. Hey, we're going to go inland over Appalachia Bay, and then we're going to come out, and then we're going to sit and spin. Then we're going to move over Georgia, drift around over there, and then we're going over Alabama. And the reason for that is because what the GFS does is it brings the trough down, lifts it up, but then it brings this tremendous trough of low pressure over the Great Lakes and brings me some really cool air next week. And I wouldn't mind that. It's summertime. You know, it got up to 80 degrees at the house today, which is really hot for Roan Mountain, Tennessee. So I wouldn't mind some highs in the low 70s for the first week in August, second week in August. That would be great for Nelson's house. But they're singing different tunes. But let me show you why this is really bad either way. Look at these rainfall amounts. We're looking at 15, 20, 25 inches if we use our doubling rule, which anytime on this map you see 15 inches, you're going to have isolated amounts, possibly 25 or 30 inches. With this system, remember, all these models are going to meander this system for 3 to 5 days before it's going to move to the northeast or it's going to move back to the west and die. One thing that's going to happen here is this system is going to be sitting here and it's going to be bringing onshore winds. It's going to be bringing these winds onshore, and these rivers are going to be filling up with rain, catastrophic flooding, and that rain is going to try to work its way down to the Atlantic Ocean. However, these winds are going to be pushing inward and stopping up the tides that are going to be trying to, and the rain that's going to be trying to drain out. So it's going to be kind of bottling up the rivers. And you're going to have abnormally high tides at these rivers. And that's just a recipe for disaster. We kind of saw that in Harvey at the Brazos River and the San Bernard River and some of these other rivers. As they were trying to drain out, Harvey was sitting there pumping strong southeasterly winds. Now, it wasn't a lot. It wasn't like they were 80 miles an hour, but they were 30, they were 35 miles an hour, and the river couldn't drain. And that's what's going to be happening along the southeast coast of the United States next week. It's going to be happening to an extent up in North Carolina. So if you are along the southeastern United States, the coast of the southeast U.S., if you're in Georgia, even to some extent maybe Florida up in Jacksonville, and even though they should have an offshore flow, hopefully, but if you're in Savannah, Charleston, Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, in that area, you need to be prepared for some catastrophic flooding over the next week or so. I can't stress enough what the potential is for this to be bad. Now, the models could change. A trough of low pressure could come down and gradually pull this out. So these things are fluid situations. They can change overnight. Even with all our capabilities, things change at the drop of a hat. So I want to thank you for joining me. I will definitely keep you guys updated. And until next time, may God richly bless you.